Hey everyone, this is AJ and welcome back to A Tangled Web episode 8, my retrospective series review leading up to the release of Spider-Man No Way Home, looking at all the Spider-Man films from the Raimi-verse up until present. Now, in this episode we're going to be taking a look at Spider-Man Far From Home, so let's get into it. Okay, so Spider-Man Far From Home. This was released in the year 2019, just before the pandemic. It was one of the last Marvel MCU films to hit the cinemas before the crap that hit the fan. Yes, so this film had a 12A rating and a runtime of 2 hours and 9 minutes. It was again directed by John Watts, who had directed the previous Spider-Man film, Homecoming. Chris McKenna was on writing duties along with Eric Summers. Now the film did see the return of Tom Holland as Peter Parker, but this time he was joined by Samuel Jackson in the role of Nick Fury. We'll get into that. Jake Gyllenhaal played Quentin Beck, otherwise known as the villain Mysterio. Marissa Tomei returned as May Parker. Jon Favreau again as Happy Hogan. Zendaya as this version's MCU MJ. Jacob Batalon as Ned, Peter's best friend. And Kobe Smulders popped up as Maria Hill. Now this film had a budget slightly lower than the last one. This one had a budget of 160 million. Probably because Robert Downey Jr. wasn't in the film. But this film at the box office went on to gross $1,132,000,000. It was sailing on the back of that Endgame money. Yep, that's what it was doing. So anyway, so this film is set after the events of Endgame. And the blip, everyone has returned. The film does play into that towards the start in a rather humorous way. It takes it with a bit of a joke, a bit of a quirkiness, much like what the first Spider-Man film handled stuff. Peter Parker is suffering because of the death of Tony Stark, his mentor. But he ends up going on this field trip with his science class to Europe, hence the title Far From Home. Whilst there, you get to learn that this other stuff is happening with these elemental creatures that are invading our Earth from a parallel Earth. This is the first mention of multiverses and that you get in this film. But you know, as we know in the context of the story, it's all a manipulation part from the role of Quentin Beck, Mysterio. He's creating all this stuff with illusion technology and all this sort of stuff in order to work his way into becoming a favoured hero within the MCU because these people are making it big and he's not, and blah blah blah. We come to learn that all these people used to work for Tony Stark in the past and have formed their own little band of misfits to use this technology for their own means. The film sees Peter Parker given Edith, which is an artificial intelligence that Tony Stark had created that Peter can access via these sunglasses. But Peter ends up giving them away to Quentin Beck because he believes into the narrative that Quentin Beck is some massive hero, and Quentin Beck comes from this other world, this multiverse world, where his world was destroyed and he's over here protecting ours from the same sort of elemental creatures. Yeah, so all this sort of stuff going on. Zendaya finds out, or she's learnt the truth herself, that Peter is Spider-Man. Their relationship blossoms. You got Sam Jackson in the mix, all this sort of stuff. You find out that Marissa Tomei's May Parker is in a relationship with Happy Hogan, and yeah, the film is very, very light-hearted. It's a lot of fun. It's much the same as Spider-Man Homecoming was. It's very much in the same vein of that, in the same sort of feel. It's based upon sort of road trip movies that you used to get, that sort of a thing. That's the sort of sense that they're going for. That's the sort of genre they're sort of plucking from to make this movie. At 2 hours and 9 minutes, I do feel that the film does overstay its welcome somewhat, and during the sort of middle bit, it does start to drag very slightly, though. It's just a minor nitpick. Now, obviously, they've had to change up Quentin Beck's origin and that, because in the comics, he is he is powered in that he uses magic and all this sort of stuff, but in this they've worked it to become illusion tech, to keep it in that realm of believability, so to speak. And this is what the MCU seems to be doing a lot, which makes little sense in the context of this film, because on the one hand you've gone to all this trouble to make Mysterio this believable character by utilising holographic technology and all these other sort of technologies to make his magic real, but yet on the other hand we're meant to believe about multiverses and elemental creatures and all this sort of stuff. So it wouldn't have been out of the ordinary to have us feel that he was actually a character infused with magic or something like that. I'm not saying that would have been a better idea. It probably certainly wouldn't have fit the narrative of the MCU, but what it would have done is not make it glaringly obvious that, you know, we've forced this really hard to make you believe in this character and make this character based in reality, but yet at the same time we're giving you this other stuff about that you're meant to buy into a narrative of elementals, and the characters within the context of the story of the film are buying into the narrative of elementals and creatures from other universes and all this sort of stuff. Yet what wouldn't they believe that there's a character infused with magic, especially when you've got someone like Doctor Strange on the scene who these characters have been introduced to. Do you see what I'm going with that, don't you? But other than that, it's a fantastic film. I know people want to see this Spider-Man grounded in New York City and this sort of thing, because New York does play a huge part within Spider-Man, and in itself is a character for that character. It's almost like a support character for him. But you had 5 films set within the MC within New York City, that being the Raimi-verse and the Webb films, you know, Garfield. So it isn't a stretch to have these ones set outside of New York and have Spider-Man play outside of his normal playground area, take him out of his comfort zone. And it's nice to see him with the backdrop of European countries, and it opens the film up to a lot of fun, you know, with the stuff with the character of Night Monkey. You know, that's quite amusing. Apologies for that. I'm still very ill. This has been filmed before what I'm doing it now. It's filmed a month ago when I weren't very well. Yeah, so it's a Night Monkey and these other sort of elements that they introduce into it, which are amusing, when he's in Holland and this sort of thing with the Dutch, you know, in the prison, all quite amusing stuff, all very good. The support cast in this again are fantastic. Standouts are Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan. Again, he just, you know, that part is fantastic. I'd love to see more of him within the MCU. The relationship beginning to build with him and May is brilliant. It's a lot of fun. The film is very funny. It's very witty. It's very fast paced and quick-witted. Yeah, what else can I say? You know, Sam Jackson obviously pops up as Nick Fury, but by the end we come to learn that it's Talos, the Skrull from that we've met in Captain Marvel, and Nick Fury's away up on a Skrull ship somewhere. This will come into play when we next see Nick Fury, probably in Secret Invasion and this sort of thing. We'll learn more about that. So a fantastic film, fantastic. My only real concern is it needs to get out of the shadow of Iron Man. It really does. This series needs to let that go now. The first film relied heavily on Tony Stark being in it and Iron Man being in it, and I do get the fact that this film comes straight after Endgame, so it has to play on Peter and his feelings towards the death of Tony Stark, but it's overshadowing Spider-Man in his own films, and they need to sort of now let that go, let that, you know, have Peter comfortable with that death and stop, you know, getting upset over it and all this sort of stuff. Focus on his own narrative, his own story, and we'll be in for some good stuff. So anyway, so that was it for this review. Again, a strong entry into the franchise, a very enjoyable film. For the most part, the Spider-Man films have been pretty good, and we'll do a ranking. Now, obviously this is my last episode of my retrospective reviews, and I will be reviewing No Way Home when I go and see it in the cinema. If all goes to plan, that should be in the next couple of days. We'll see how that goes, but my review will drop and I will give you my thoughts on that. So please consider hitting the subscribe button and notification bell so you can keep apprised of that upcoming content, and we'll discuss about it. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this film? Let me know. And yeah, anyway, this is AJ. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care all, and goodbye.